is the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast. My name's Andrew Jones, and with me today is
Sarah Bolt.
How you doing, Sarah?
Do you know, I've thought about this. I always answer the question the same. So today I'm pointing out I always answer the question the same, but actually I'm really good. Thank you, Andrew. How are you?
Don't worry about it, because I usually start the conversation the same. So, give it some consistency. Yeah, no, I'm all right, Ta. I'm all right, Ta. Obviously, we've had a little bit of rain as we record this, so certainly we'll green things up. But obviously, we'll have to wait and see where it goes from here.
Definitely. The rain dance has worked.
Oh, looks like we're talking about the weather again.
It is. But there was something else that I was going to mention, was the Farming Equipment and Technology Fund. That one's just reopened and well worth a look if you're looking to buy some things, whether that's animal welfare or slurry and various bits.
Have you got a list of what it covers or not?
It's too many to mention, but right. All on the government website, but definitely worth a look.
Definitely. All these things are worth a look. Definitely. But I mean, I guess mentioning technology, I guess that's what we're here to talk about today, is another new technology development. We're talking about calf immune status, but let's be honest, we're talking very much about the ImmunIGY testing for IgGs from calf colostrum, or check calf status. It's a very interesting episode, isn't it?
It is. I love it. I mean, obviously, young stock's one of my passion areas anyway, but it's a very interesting development, really, and I think something really useful.
It is. I mean, we've been sort of teasing in a couple of intros or podcasts, little spits going, oh, we know the answer, but we don't want to tell you. We don't want to spoil it. And when I totally forgotten what the actual amount was, but when you listen back, and I guess it ties in that little bit we did earlier in the year on antimicrobial report and dropping usage, when you hear how much a calf with the correct IgG status, so it's had good colostrum management, reduces in antibiotic use, it is huge, isn't it?
It's absolutely amazing. So it's really just one of the basics that we should all really be getting right. And I think this is a great tool for actually allowing farmers to be able to check that.
Exactly. It's a good, easy on-farm tool that allows you to check it then and there. I believe there were ways of doing it before, but that was complicated. It took time, it took effort and money, whereas this is relatively cheap, relatively easy, can be done on farm yourself, just to see where you are. And like always, if you can't quantify it, you can't do anything about it. So I think it's an amazing bit of kit when you hear the results.
Definitely. And great for beef farmers buying in those young calves as well.
Definitely.
Just to see what their immune status is when they arrive on farm.
Well, I think we mentioned, I mean, if people just at least try 10 and see where they are. But anyway, we're spoiling the podcast before we get there. So yes, I hope you enjoy. Let's go talk calf immune status. This podcast has been brought to you today by Chewing the Cud Limited, who offer independent advice for dairy and beef nutrition, cow signals advice and training, along with ROMS mobility scoring. For more details on these and other services available, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us direct on nutrition@chewingthecud.com. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry. Farmer, advisor, processor, and everyone else, we have topics and episodes that will interest you. We discuss the practical and the technical aspects of different UK dairy industry topics. We aim to make you think about what you're doing and ask yourself, can it be done differently? Listen to us speak with specialists from inside and outside the industry about their area of expertise. Subscribe and listen to episodes for free on your favourite podcast platform, or sign up on our website www.chewingthecud.com for podcast notifications so you never miss an episode, and links to our socials, including our Instagram, Chewing the Cud Podcast. All one word, and remember, no G. Or email us direct on podcast@chewingthecud.com. If you like what we do, please share and leave us a review to show your support. And that's it. Enjoy today's episode. So hello and welcome back to Chewing the Cud. And today, as we've already mentioned, we're going to talk about calf immune status and getting it right. So our guests today are, and this is a bit of a mouthful, so apologies if I get it wrong, Connor Smith, Product Lead for Diagnostic and Ruminant Nutrition Specialist at Bimeda. Hello, Connor.
Hello, good morning.
And also Rachel Hayton, who is Vet and Research Lead at Synergy Farm Health. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning.
I hope you're both well. So we are here to talk about, I've got to get this right. I'll get it right by the end of this podcast. No, I can't. Connor, can you tell me what we're here?
We're here to talk about ImmunIGY Bovine IgG.
ImmunIGY, that'll do. We're here to talk about ImmunIGY. You can laugh, Rachel. It's fine. It's not a problem. Sarah had to put up with me trying to get carbon sequestration right.
I was going to say it was almost a sequestration moment there, Andrew.
I know. I had to have it written down to be able to say sequestration. So we're at that point still with me. So by the end, we'll be all right. So anyway, before we get on to that, Connor, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where we are today.
Yep. So as mentioned, my name's Connor Smith. I work for Bimeda UK. Background-wise, I've got quite a dairy-strong background. I come from what I like to term as very humble beginnings. My career in agriculture started when I was at the humble age of 13. I got a job washing milk bottles on a local dairy farm, and within about a week I was asked if I'd like to have a go at milking the cows, and I suppose you could say the rest is history.
Yep.
Went off to college at the age of 16, went off to Recife, very naively thought I would do a diploma and live the rest of my days farming and live happily ever after. But so just as I came to the end of the diploma, that was when I started thinking this is getting quite interesting now, and I was sort of hungry for more. So I went on to do a bachelor's degree in dairy herd management and agricultural business management, and then sort of over the term of that course I had an increasing interest in animal health, and that's what led me to do a master's degree in ruminant nutrition at Harper Adams University.
Yep.
I finished that degree, went back to managing a dairy herd for about a period of 1 or 2 years, and it wasn't long before I was poached to come into industry, and subsequently I'm sitting here as a representative of Bimeda Animal Health.
That's fair enough. And Rachel, what about yourself?
So I graduated as a vet from Edinburgh in 1993 and went into mixed practice, as we all did back then.
Yep.
Really enjoyed it, but loved the farm work, and it wasn't long before I just went into farm animal only practice.
And that's what Synergy is just farm, isn't it?
Synergy's farm animal veterinary practice, in the southwest of England. And I've worked as a clinical vet for about 30 years. The last few years I've been leading our research programme, which has grown to the extent that for the last 2 years that's been my full-time job. I've been research lead at Synergy, and I'm actually no longer
practicing
cows, routine fertility visits, no longer do any of that, just running research.
Do you miss it?
I thought I would.
Yep.
I miss it sometimes, particularly when our vets are talking about the doing do and the lives.
Yes, because vets have all got stories.
All got stories, and so I sometimes feel a little sad that I'm not part of that.
And we've all got stories about vets too.
Those stories still persist, but actually, I think the job that I do now, I could never have imagined that this would be where I'd end up. And I do feel very privileged that I get to do some really interesting things, and I feel as though I'm making a difference. So, I think we can't all do everything all the time.
Yeah. Well, I should say this podcast came about because I'm not sure if you've heard them yet when this goes out, but Neil and I both went to the Butlar Open Day back in the beginning of the year. And one of the things we saw there was the
It's the ImmunIGY.
ImmunIGY, thank you. The ImmunIGY, I will get it right. The ImmunIGY being demonstrated on farm. And I went up on the first day, rang Neil up and said, I think you ought to go and have a look. And he went the second day and came back and said, we need to do some podcasts on this. So off just that one day, we've got 3 podcasts, which are great. But the ImmunIGY, see, I got it right that time. The ImmunIGY it just looks such a great piece of equipment. And when you said what it is, so I know it was done in collaboration with Butalar and what's come out of it. So where did it come from? Probably more Rachel, this would have started this part of the story, I'm guessing. How did it come about for you then to go on? And then when did Bimeda come into it to come to where it is? Now, I suppose we ought to briefly say what it does ultimately is it tests the calf to see what the colostrum management's been like, to then know what their immune status is further down the line. That's a basic outline. Is that what you'd say what it is?
It measures, it's a calf side test for IgG, which are a particular sort of antibody that calves have in their bloodstream, and the majority of IgG comes from maternal colostrum.
Yep. Okay. So people at least know what we're talking about. We'll get more into it because I know Butalar made some comments on the day about what they've seen from it. So I guess, Rachel, probably starting with you, how did it come about? You guys must be doing work with Butalar, and then what made this develop?
So originally it came from a need to find out what was a predictor of success in calves arriving on a rearing unit.
Because they're getting in, 10 days old usually?
They arrive between about 2 and 6 weeks of age.
Right.
And they come from a variety of dairy farms. There'll be the beef bred.
Beef cross.
Beef from the dairy farm. And the existing tests for colostrum can only really be carried out in the first week of life.
Okay.
So, by the time this calf arrives on the rearing unit, it's really too late. It used to be too late to assess what the colostrum management. What were
the existing tests at a week then?
So the affordable tests are actual indirect tests. So they're looking for total protein.
Right.
Because it's an indirect test, once you get over a week old, there are too many other factors.
Variables.
Protein levels. So it's really only a good check in the first week. But the ImmunIGY test tests IgG, so it's a much more specific test. It's also qualitative, so it gives a number.
Yep.
Quantitative, that's what I meant.
Yes.
Quantitative test.
Yep.
So it began out of this idea of how do we work out which calves have had a good start when they arrive on farm, and that was a collaboration between Adam Butalar and actually my husband, Alistair Hayton.
Yep. And
he sat down and thought, right, how can we make a really quick, affordable calf side test that will answer this question?
So there's no point having a test that takes, I don't know, huge amount of time and effort to do. It needs to be quick and easy, basically, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And actually, in the first instance, he wanted to make it a salivary test.
Okay.
He thought that would be really simple and
quick and a lot quicker and easier. Yeah.
And Alistair approached Joe Dunbar, who runs Soma Bioscience, who actually works with athletes.
Yeah.
And he produces diagnostic tests which help athletes to know when they're going to perform at their best, when their immune system's under stress. And
can I have one of these tests?
Get in touch with him. He works with a variety of kind of athletes, sporting teams, footballers, boxers. Really fascinating guy. And they did try and develop this test for IgG in calf saliva, but unfortunately.
So what time period how far back are we going for this?
Oh, now you're asking. I'd say that would be 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
But unfortunately, saliva wasn't a reliable way of measuring it.
Yeah.
So then they looked at blood and discovered that actually you could make a really good lateral flow device measuring IgG.
And we all know what lateral flow is these days.
Unfortunately, we do.
I can definitely say, as somebody who works in sales, it has made life a lot easier.
Has it?
Explanation. Everybody knows how to use that.
So COVID had a positive for you then,
yeah,
Connor?
It's just a bad memory for everybody else, I suppose, isn't it?
So yeah, you worked out then a lateral flow is the way to go. Yep.
Yeah, so they developed, it's actually a competitive ELISA. We get lines, but we don't just have to look at the line. There's a little cube reader which gives you then a numerical reading, which tells you what the IgG level is.
So that's okay. So that's reading the lines effectively for you, right? Okay.
I mean, the example that I always give, you'll probably recall when you had COVID, when you were really at the height of it, you get a really intense line of the test.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. So a COVID test would be a sandwich assay, and this is what we call a competitive assay. In simple terms, that means it works the other way around. So the weaker the line is, the better the IgG. But as Rachel says, you're then just dropping what's effectively a chromatographic reader, which interprets the strength of that line, and that's directly proportional to how much IgG1 has been detected within that blood sample.
So you've developed the test. I'm guessing at this point, then that's when Connor and Bimeda come into the loop, or?
Yeah, we were lucky enough to get funding from Innovate UK.
Okay,
and we ran a validation on the test against a laboratory gold standard ELISA. And we've also
which I'm guessing it would be more cost, more time, all of these sorts, and give you the same result, but just be a lot more.
Absolutely, you'd have to take the sample, send it away to a lab, wait for the result, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
So we ran the validation using Innovate funding, and then we also sampled about 1,700 calves and have been following their performance and then correlating their IgG level with their performance. So that's been really interesting. We've found...
And with beef cattle, you can get that result quicker, can't you, than dairy cattle, to be honest with you? Because usually you're slaughtering them by, 18, 24 months. You know what they've done. And dairy cows, you wait until 3 years, really, before you know if they've done their first lactation, they've done what they're supposed to.
And because it's an integrated, Butela have got an integrated beef supply chain, we're able to follow them all the
way through.
But we've been looking at antibiotic use in these calves, and the difference in antibiotic use between the lowest and the highest is absolutely astonishing. So we've seen that when there's an inadequate level of IgG, we get 40% higher antibiotic use.
40%?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it is. I know it was mentioned on the day, because you're involved with the microbial report with Kingshay.
We are at Kingshay, yes. We look at antimicrobial usage and looking at the rumour.
But I mean, I certainly saw something was said on the day that we know that we use less antibiotics and they're healthier, they do better. But 40%, that's huge.
Absolutely. We didn't see very much difference in mortality, it has to be said, but then the unit that we're looking at has very low mortality. I think if we looked at it and this is one of my goals going forward, is to look at it on a unit with much higher mortality, because I think then we would see differences.
Because let's be honest, that research farm that Butela have, it's just everything, that is their focus, isn't it? Try and do everything they can right and do a good job of it.
Absolutely, and that is the result of hard work. They have very low mortality.
And I think it's fair to say that makes the results more impactful, the fact that they're a unit that they're completely on top of everything. And really in terms of seeing high antimicrobial usage or even reductions in daily live weight gain, you wouldn't necessarily expect it of a unit of that stature. So it really does just hone in what an impact the IgG status of these calves
as you say, it'd be interesting, like you say, Rachel, to put it somewhere. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but doesn't achieve quite the results that they are achieving at that farm, to see what a difference it might make.
Absolutely.
And sorry, Sarah, how late can you use this test?
So we found it was predictive of performance up to, if we did the test up to 6 weeks old. Over 6 weeks, it wasn't predictive.
Right, so it can be used up to 6 weeks old.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got different cut-offs. Because the IgG level in calves does naturally wane as they get older.
You'd expect that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cut-offs are lower in calves between 2 and 6 weeks. And we're still looking, we're constantly researching that, and I think we're going to, there's lots more still to learn.
Keep tweaking it, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we also found that there was a relationship with live weight gain as well. So the calves with the lower levels did have poorer live weight gain. But it wasn't as quite as marked as the antibiotic figures.
No, but even if you just take that 40%, that's just huge.
The costs, the implications to the consumer and everything else, I think. And if there are still positives on the live weight gain. And I think sort of that's what I was going to ask, as to sort of thinking about why do we need to understand the immunity, and, you know, what are the costs of that within sort of the supply chain, and what are the costs of not getting our colostrum management right, I think is something that we really need to put a figure on it to really understand. And I think, you know, just highlighting the difference in antibiotic usage and possible live weight gains as well on a good unit, as you say, the skies are probably the limit on other units. So I think
100% agree with that, and I think that's a lot of the impetus behind what we're trying to do as a company in terms of getting that awareness. As in, why should I be testing my calves? Why would I want to lower the incidence of failure of passive transfer? And the reality is that it's because it carries such a huge cost bearing. I think, you know, I can talk when I was a naive 16-year-old going off to college, you're told about the importance of passive transfer of immunity and how it's sort of integral for those first few weeks of life. And I always recall taking this naive view of, oh, well, you know, if you get the calf through those first couple of weeks, you're fine then. But the reality is you're not. The impacts are then there with the calf for the rest of its life. And
yeah, I mean, when you look at, is it AHDB work, isn't it, on how many, is it something like 20% of first lactation animals don't get through to second lactation, and all of that. And I mean, I know I've mentioned it before, but I was at a conference in the summer, and Alex Back was there from, is it University of Barcelona, and his comment about, well, if they're ill, you might as well just knock them on the head now. Okay, I'm you know, I mean, giving an abridged version, but basically knock them on the head now, because they're the calves that usually don't make it through to the end of their second lactation anyway. So take that loss then. So it is so important getting everything right. I mean, I guess we touched on it when we spoke to Laura Tennant about milk powders and stuff as well. But, you know, even before you even put a first milk powder in front of it, you've got to get the colostrum in that animal to get it right. And I mean, I know Buta are now paying a little bit, aren't they? If they've got the better IgG results, they're getting a bit more for the calf. Is that right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's been talked about.
It's been talked about.
I think it's the first time that calf rearers have been able to get a handle on which are the best quality calves, because when you can look at it with hindsight, you know, but they've actually got the ability to predict now, and so that's quite powerful. But I think it's early days with us working out exactly the best way to use that information.
I'm guessing every calf is tested as it comes on site.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're now moving into the next phase is we're doing an intervention study, which means we're going to try and manage those calves differently.
The ones that don't have the good status.
We're looking at separating them out.
Yeah.
Because it's possible that they're the ones that start the disease outbreak.
Yes, because they're lower to start with. They catch it first, and then it spreads to the rest.
So we're even, you know, interested to see whether the calves with good status are actually healthier when you remove the low calves.
Yeah,
we're looking at differential management, things like maybe a little bit lower stocking density. Enhanced milk feeding regimes, this sort of thing. And we're also looking at different thresholds for when you might start to instigate antibiotic treatment, because normally when you're rearing calves, if a certain number of calves get sick, you might treat the whole group. That's metaphylaxis.
Which is what I believe they do, isn't it? Is it 1-3 in a pen of 10, then they'll treat the whole group?
So we might have different thresholds for the ones that we already know are high risk.
Yeah.
We're going to sort of look at all of those interventions and see if we can, in effect, overcome the disadvantage that those.
Treat them slightly. I give them, how do I put it, a bit more TLC to maybe get them through the system a little bit better.
And certainly to pay for the cost of testing, if you like, so you actually get a cost benefit, because information's one thing, but then turning that around.
I mean, you mentioned that. What is the cost?
Yeah, well, I mean, so that's a very
nice handoff there, Rachel.
So And in terms of bearing a real sort of assessment, the latest one we've got, unfortunately, was conducted in 2016. So there was a meta-analysis that was done. I think it was a French study.
Yep.
And they determined an approximate cost for every case of failure of passive transfer.
Yep.
We've got a cost of around £50 in dairy animals and around £70 in beef animals.
Right.
But what I always emphasise is that doesn't begin to scratch the surface, because I know for a fact that Greg and Rowan won't mind, but I'll use pick stocks as an example. George Pert from Promar, who's working with them, he's effectively worked out that because these calves with failure of passive transfer are taking just that bit longer to grow, that's already an additional cost of £78 a head in feed.
Well, it isn't. The best way to make money in beef is turn those animals over as quickly as possible.
Exactly. And then we've got other studies, going back as far as there's one in 2005 that looked at the differences in what we're seeing in culling incidence and milk yield, and the significant trends in that you can be losing 1,000 litres by the time you get to second lactation.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Between calves that succumbed to failure of passive transfer and ones that didn't.
Right.
I mean, there was talk at Dairy Day, whether it's true or not, I don't know, of us getting up to around 45 pence per litre again. I mean, if you think, 1,000 litres at that's a significant cost. That's without taking into account anything else. So it's always important to bear that before I give you the real answer, which is how much is the test.
But you are right, though, isn't it? All of this comes, like I say, it comes back to what we talked with Laura and all of that. It's all about getting it right. And so much work has been shown that, your best feed conversion is when they're at that young age, when they're effectively still a monogastric and you're feeding them milk. All of these things, it's really put that effort into getting it right as a calf, because then it follows. I mean, I've done some sums in the past and had recommended a particular milk powder, and I'll be blunt, it's Energizer. I recommended it to somebody, and we did the sums, and yes, it had a higher headline price, but you actually, because of its feed rate was slightly different, you actually fed less of it. So they were only having to buy 3 tonne rather than 3.5 tonne to do with their calves, which actually worked out cheaper. So it's not just about the headline price. You need to look at that. And then I would argue the benefits something like that brings. As I said with Laura, I like Energizer a lot, and I'm quite open about that. But it's getting that calf right. And if getting it, as I say, even before you put the milk powder in front of it, you've got to get that colostrum transfer right. And that makes a huge difference.
I'm going to throw one in the pot as well, that I'm sure that figure doesn't include increased labour costs of, all of that extra time of dealing with sick animals.
Yes.
That affects people's motivations and everything else. We've just been speaking to Paul Harris, haven't we, before this, but and it's thinking about how all of those things impact the staff, impact.
Well, sick animals, calves, whatever, they always take the time, don't they? And that's what you want to be avoiding. I mean, I know it's an extreme case, but I remember the story any other day when I was in Australia. I heard a story of a large dairy in Australia that as they're calving a cow, they had to use a calf jack for whatever reason. As they're calving a cow, the calf team are already there bagging the calf with colostrum. Now, you might argue that's a little bit too early because the calf isn't fully out of the cow at this stage. It was still in by the hips, but they were straight in, and that was their protocol. That they did it, and people need to do that if they're not. And I suppose there is we've now got a way of measuring that to show how well it's been.
And an aspect actually of this test that we haven't raised is that there's a novel way of taking the sample as well,
right?
Which is a lancet.
Right.
Just to the nose. So
Yep.
It's a little pinprick, and it means that farm staff can take the sample.
Yeah, it doesn't need a vet or whoever to do it.
It doesn't need a vet, and so a farmer can actually get the kit and take control of the colostrum management and assessing that.
Yep.
That colostrum management. So that's quite an appealing way of doing it for dairy farmers as well. And it's an interesting psychology. But I remember when tag and test became a thing for BVD. And I think there was a whole sort of section of farmers that like to be in control of their own stuff.
Yep.
And they engaged with tag and test in a way that they had never engaged when the vet had to come out and do the sampling.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. And you've been avoiding it, Connor, so let's go back to you now.
I thought that might be coming.
Well, from what I've been told, it's not too bad. So what is the cost?
There's absolutely a clear return there. But so this is, as Rachel says, farmers can do this test themselves. So it's openly marketed to farmers. It's as simple as going onto the Bimeda website or the ImmunIGY website, and you can purchase a kit straight from there. But it comes out at about £9 per calf tested. Yeah, the initial cost, it's the cube. Really. It's the cube is what the initial cost is really, so isn't it? There's always the additional option to have your vet doing the testing. So yes, it might cost a little bit more, but they're then footing the outlay of that cube reader. Yeah. But so you can buy a cube yourself, but otherwise, let's say it's under a tenner. Yeah. Under a tenner for it. Well, given what we've already just said between ourselves here, what's a tenner a calf? I realise it's a cost to anybody listening to this, but when you look at the benefits from that, surely that's what's got to be important. And that's the thing, there was a trial done over in the States, and they went on just short of 400 dairy farms, and they simply asked the question, do you IgG test your calves, yes or no? Now, for those farmers that said, no, we don't test our calves, subsequently, they took blood samples, and for the ones that didn't test, nearly 20% were succumbing to failure of passive transfer. Right. Whereas for those farms that were proactively testing, they actually found that only 2.8% of those calves succumbed to FPT. So, in summary, the way to lower the incidence is to test. I mean, as I say, because of this, are suppliers into butylard doing things differently off the back of this?
That's a good question, actually. I think some and some is probably the answer. I think it's early days for that. I certainly haven't started capturing it yet. I have been benchmarking them by percentage at, low, medium, high. What you do with that information is sometimes quite sensitive, actually. Yes. But I agree with Connor. I think knowledge is power, and if you don't have that information, you can't do anything about it. Well, you've got to quantify things before you can do something about them, haven't you? Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think ultimately this is the conclusion that the industry is coming to. We're looking at mortality rates in calves over the past 10 years, and we're seeing very little change. And there's always been this big push on colostrum management, the 3 Qs, and it was the 5 Qs, and we all know about it, we've all heard it, but I think nut and bolts of it is, if you're not quantifying, you don't know. If you drop the ball, you're blissfully unaware until you've got a pen of calves at 3-4 weeks old, and all of a sudden there's a scour outbreak or pneumonia or, but by then the horse has bolted. Well, I was going to say, if I'm Mr. Dairy Farmer, I listen to this, I decide I want to go and test 10 calves. Let's say I decided to test 10 calves to see what I do. If I got the results, I thought I was doing a good job, for argument's sake. I was measuring my colostrum, making sure they got 2 litres, whatever your protocol is. If I'm then finding that I'm not getting the result I thought I was getting, I guess it's probably more aimed at you, Rachel. What should I be doing? I think at that point it's worth a conversation with your vet. But I can give a sort of bit of an overview. Obviously, it's all about the first 24 hours for that calf. It's the first feed as early as possible. Ideally, first 6 hours. Absolutely. First 6 hours, 4 litres. It's got to be good quality colostrum. It's got to be clean, not contaminated. And preferably, the evidence shows, followed up by a second feed a few hours later. And I think on that, Rachel, that we've been seeing a different sort of what's best practice as to levels of sort of bricks and the like that we used to talk about sort of 22% bricks being quite a good level, and that seems to be sort of creeping up to sort of 24% and everything else. And I think that it's just that fine tuning, and actually a test like this can really help us fine tune. Shall I throw something controversial in here? Alex Back basically went, don't bother testing your colostrum. Oh yes, of course. And why was that? Because I'm intrigued. I think it was basically, he goes, well, everybody's colostrum's right anyway, so why do you waste all your time doing it? I think that was, again, I'm summarising, but effectively that's what he said, don't waste your time doing that. But when it's so easy with the bricks, why wouldn't you? Yeah, I think we do see farms that have got disappointing colostrum quality, and that can sometimes be addressed. It can be a nutritional issue, for argument's sake. It can be. It's usually as simple as when do you actually milk the animal, but it's not always as simple as that. And so, and also, I think if you've got lower quality, you can compensate for it with quantity. You can feed more. It's that full amount of IgGs you're getting in. And I've always been one of those that says
actually, if you know what it is, if it's only 17,
Feed
you
a bit
can
more.
give that extra feed and do something about it.
Yeah.
It's knowing where you are to be able to make that difference,
So I'm
isn't
not
it?
sure we agree with that advice then, do we?
I don't
Hey,
know.
it doesn't matter. It's the whole point is a discussion, isn't it? To people listen and make their own
And
choices.
I've come across people who are very traditional in their approach and just leave it to nature, and then when you do the monitoring, everything's hunky-dory. Great, fine. If it's not broken, don't fix it. But if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know from my experience, I didn't sort of used to bother, and it was like, oh, you think that calf's so, and then it just became, right, no, that's it. Every calf, as soon as it's born, 2 litres, and then we'll follow it up with another 2 litres, and it made a difference, definitely. You certainly weren't getting those, I'm not saying got a huge amount of losses, but you suddenly lost that calf, and you went, that calf didn't suck, did it? Right, I'm taking that nature, I suppose, out of it. I'm going to ensure that every calf gets given colostrum.
And, one of the things that's coming out of our research is the fact that this is not a sort of black and white, it either got enough or it didn't.
Right.
What we're finding is that the higher the level, the better these calves
Do.
as well. So I think our whole approach to this is becoming more nuanced. And if you're measuring it and you think you're doing all right,
Yep.
if you know what your average level is and how many calves are in each category, you can still do better, and the calves will do better
Sure.
as a result.
Which is interesting, definitely. So, like you're saying, is if you even if you think you're doing everything right in terms of bricks and and litres and all that, you still think it's probably worth, for argument's sake, not buying a cube, but doing it through your vet in that case, just to do 10, just to see where you are, and can things then be improved going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually, I suppose it's not surprising, is it? But we're doing quite a lot of the testing for our clients.
Yep.
We're encouraging them to take the samples.
Yep.
Sometimes our vets take the samples, sometimes our clients do. And then we've got, obviously if you're going to be a high user, then it's a no-brainer to
Do
have
of your own. When you say you're doing and the clients are taking their own, how long have they got between taking them before they've got to be brought in to be tested?
Yeah, it's pretty good actually. The samples are stable for at least a week.
Oh, so
room
a good
temperature.
amount of time then. It's
Yeah,
not
once
like got to
they're
be a
in-
couple of hours or something.
You put the little capillary tube into this buffer pot.
Yep.
Once it's in the buffer pot and properly mixed, it's stable for over a week.
Oh, no, that's really, so that again makes it relatively easy for you to take it, and then next time you go into town or whatever it is,
Absolutely.
take it to the vets.
Yeah, and do them in batches.
Yeah. No,
Sure.
definitely. Oh, well. So, Connor, what's it going from your point of view?
Tremendously well. Well, we're sort of just coming up to our first year in business now.
Yep.
But the response from the industry has been fantastic. I mean, myself and Rachel were fortunate enough to be at the Cream Awards last Thursday.
Yep.
We picked up highly commended in the innovation category.
Yep.
Earlier in the year.
Well done.
I got the pleasure, thank you very much, of going to meet the Princess Royal.
Yep.
We won the Royal Innovation Award down at Dairy Tack as well.
Yep.
We're also up for British Farming Awards, and I think really all of that, it just comes back to the fact that I think the industry is recognising that there's been a long-standing need for this type of test, hence why we're getting such a positive reaction.
Well, so it's been very positive, hasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Connor's colleagues now refer to him as the award-winning.
now multi-award winning as well, I might add, yeah.
Oh, we got to have a bit of fun, haven't you?
Worse. I've definitely been called worse.
So, I mean, Rachel, you said you're still tweaking this going forward, and I guess you've already spoken about something, but where do you see this going?
So I get really excited. I'm always looking at the next thing on the horizon. And one of the things that I think there's scope for, you mentioned that earlier finishing is nearly always the answer.
Yes.
And I think some of these animals they're not going to be as profitable
Yep.
as their healthier counterparts. And actually, historically, they stay in the system longer.
Yep.
They take longer to finishing. If you could identify them, you'd actually finish them sooner. They might not look as great.
Yeah, you might start them sooner, get moving.
It would
Yeah.
totally make economic sense. So
Yeah.
I'm quite excited about this idea of transferring information with a calf, and you
Yeah.
can do that maybe in an integrated chain in a way you can't in the more sort of traditional fragmented system. But I'm really keen on that notion, and as just being a little bit smarter about the way we do things and using the information to make us more profitable, as well as obviously to go back and prevent these issues in the first
I'm going to put one
place.
in there as well, on not just more profitable. We're thinking of carbon footprint. The longer they're on farm, sustainability is really going to be, it's going to have that big impact. And I think that's something we really need to be thinking about.
And we already know, that if you want to lower the carbon intensity of beef, finish quicker. But for these animals, absolutely.
That's a really interesting idea, actually, that let's say you put them in to finish at 500 kilos, you might put them in at 450 because they're never going to get there. So they're going to take too long to get there because of that health status. Well, then we push them in the system quicker and then get them through quicker.
And are we even looking at sort of different markets at the end then in that case? Are we going to segregate them far earlier on for different markets?
Funnily enough, I've been talking to colleagues on the continent. The veal producers are very interested in this, and they're even talking about, exactly that, determining which animals go into the veal system and which go into a slightly slower system based on what their predictive
health status is.
But there's that's sort of one end of it. It's quite an extreme end of using data, but it's really interesting.
But it still sounds like we're very much at the beginning of the journey of potentially where this could go in terms of we've got the data. It's now how we start using that data to make the beef industry more profitable, more sustainable, however it happens to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because we've been talking about colostrum for such a long time, haven't we? And you could be mistaken for thinking it was all done and dusted and in the bag. But I think there's so much more to learn, even into the nuances between every category, from low to high.
Yep.
What are the real thresholds? We've been talking about below 10 and over 10 for so long, no one even thinks about it. But I think there's a lot more to the threshold, and there's also a lot more to us learning about that journey of a calf from when it's born and what happens to its IgG levels as it goes through those first few weeks of life. If they get ill or if they don't get ill. But anyway, watch this space. We'll come back.
Are you finding calves, even if they get ill and they've had good IgGs, are you finding they're responding quicker, getting healthier quicker?
So all the data on calves with good IgGs is that they do better.
They do better.
I mean, you can always find an individual.
The outlier.
The studies on that are all in agreement. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, hence the cost bearing again, because it's plain and simple. I spend a lot of time talking to vets about this, but I always summarise by saying, well, it's plain obvious, isn't it? If you've got lowered immune status, you're going to succumb to disease. If you succumb to disease, there's a cost bearing with that.
Yeah.
And is it going to become, sort of the beef industry is so reliant on the dairy industry for the calves, the sort of non-dairy calves aren't perhaps sort of as profitable, and dare I say it, that beef calves have always been sort of classed as second class citizen really on dairy farms, but actually is this going to help dairy farmers perhaps get a better price if they treat them a bit better at that early stage? Are there sort of...
I do hope so. It would be nice to see a system where best practice was rewarded.
Definitely.
And I think those relationships are forming now. I think there's a lot of work has gone into that in recent years from dairy farmers producing a calf that the market wants, which is really important. And then, more integrated systems springing up that actually are saying what they want. And,
well, it was definitely interesting when Neil and I sat down with, it was Jade from Butler, and I can't remember the young lady's name from Morrison's, apologies to her. But what came out of it is we need dairy farmers. This doesn't work without dairy farmers. We need dairy farmers to have the beef cross calves to then go into Butler or whatever system it happens to be, or not. But we still need those beef cross calves, which means we need dairy farmers.
Absolutely.
I'll be honest, I was probably guilty of that, Sarah, in the fact that to me a beef calf was I just wanted to hit the ground, make the cow as long as the cow calved easily, hit the ground. I just want it gone as quickly as possible. I wasn't interested in it. It was just second-class citizen. So I hold my hand up and say I was definitely guilty of that. I didn't want to say I wouldn't try and give it colostrum, but you still it didn't get the same attention then as the heifer calves.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost the elephant in the room, isn't it? But, it comes back to what Sarah was saying. I've met some very passionate calf rearers that are very aware that these are being treated as second-class citizens. And ultimately, the whole primary aim of this is to improve animal welfare. If an animal's then predisposed to getting ill more frequently, the reality is it's going to suffer. Yeah. I mean, outside of Butylor, Conan, what's the reception been on farm from people that have used it on farm? Yeah, no, fantastic on farm. To be fair, obviously Rachel can attest to this, but it is really slick. It is just so easy, and it's hard to get across through a microphone. But when you see it in action, I'd urge anybody to go on the website and at least see a video of it in action. It's really fast. I was catching up with Chris, and I know you won't mind me saying, from Stowell Farms up at Dairy Day. Oh, yeah. This week. Yep. And I said, how's it going with the testing? And he said, great, but it's costing me a fortune. Why is it costing you a fortune? He said, well, because I've got a young girl that does the calf management, and I've promised her £20 for every calf that comes back with a She's now doing a fantastic job because she knows these calves are getting tested, and if there's a great result there, she's got a bonus. And I think that's great. If we can replicate that a bit more, that's not a bad thing. There's never really been that sense of urgency or need to get it right, I think, sometimes. And it's so easy to get caught up in a lot of the mundane day-to-day stuff and forget about these things, but they're so vastly important. Yeah. Well, as you say, it comes down to profitability, sustainability, welfare. It all just comes back to getting that right start. And this is you could argue, do we need it because this should be being done right anyway? But the point is just now quantifying whether it is being done or isn't being done. So we can now say that. And as we've already said, Butylor are talking about offering a bonus. Like you're saying, Chris is offering his calf. I can't remember. It's not Hayton. I can't remember. And certainly pet stocks likewise. Looking to do the same thing. And for us, that's always been the big thing. It's not a stick to beat the farmer with and say you're doing an awful job. It's a carrot on a stick to say here's an incentive for doing a great job. Yeah, because it benefits both parties. Exactly. But I think for the calf rearers, they're probably conscious that when these calves come in that haven't been adequately managed, they then bear that cost. And of course, we talk about carbon as well. And in terms of the bigger picture, it's best for everybody. It really is.
And when we're looking at antibiotic use, the calf rearing sector, where you've got calves coming from lots of multiple sources at quite a vulnerable age, that is probably the outlier in the cattle industry in terms of antibiotic use. But this really does give us a tool to get on top of that and bring it down. And I don't even mean that as a criticism. I think it's inevitable. It's been a really important model that's been created that solves the problem, but we've still got to just fine tune it and get it working optimally. But
already, as you say, you're very much at the start of the journey, but already some of the results you're saying, I'm still staggered 40% loss in, 40% reduction in antibiotic use for those calves that had the good IgGs.
We were quite surprised when we saw that, but it's been replicated since.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it has. You wouldn't be quoting it, would you? Let's be honest, but it's still a staggering amount.
Yeah, totally. And I should say that they try and avoid group treatments where possible, and so we can see those figures very well because the majority of antibiotic treatments on this unit are given on an individual calf basis.
That's a staggering amount.
It's awesome, isn't it? It's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, totally. These are the things that make my job exciting.
Well, undoubtedly, because you get a result like that. If you can turn around and go, well, to the industry, if you are doing this and we can prove there's a 40% reduction in result use in antibiotics, we should all be, waving our flags and going and running for it as quickly as we can. Or not necessarily running for the test, I should say. Maybe it's another way to say, well, not again beat the stick, but we need to be doing a better job of our colostrum because look at the difference it's making. It's just now we can quantify it.
Yeah, it's so tangible when you do make that difference.
And shouting about it outside of the industry that we are doing our bit to reduce antimicrobial usage, and we need to be shouting about that even more. And it's.
Am I allowed to give a plug for the medicine hub in that case?
I think you should.
Because that's our way of shouting about antibiotic use, yes.
Well, it is. The UK's massively reduced them, haven't they, compared to some other countries? We've massively reduced antibiotic use in the last, 5 years or something, I think it is.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I think we are a good news story, and there's a lot of good work going on, and it's going to get better. But we've got to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we've got to collect that as a country.
Yep.
And report it.
Well, hopefully people listening to this will go,
Yeah.
Medicine Hub, Medicine Hub, Medicine Hub.
no, not Medicine Hub. The whole
okay.
ImmunIGY is a good thing.
Oh, alongside that.
Oh no, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. But Connor, do you think there's anything else from your point of view?
No, I mean, I think that fairly well covers it, but I will summarise by saying I think I've come up with a title for this, and it probably should be getting the basics right, because I think that's what ImmunIGY is all about. It's getting the basics right. If you don't get the basics right at the start of that calf's life, it's never going to grow into the animal that it would have grown into. And I'll use Jenny Sherwin's analogy that we shamefully stole when she did a webinar for us back last year when we launched.
Yeah.
She gave the analogy of bee larvae, and the way she described it was that with bee larvae, when you've got ones in nectar of low sugar levels, they're the ones that subsequently become worker bees. I
know the one I heard Georgina use it first, actually.
It's great, why not use it? It's fantastic. And the ones with high sugar levels, they're your queen bees. And it's the same reality with colostrum. I mean, we've even had some pedigree breeders that are sort of using it to gauge replacement decisions as well, because whilst you can have something that, on paper, it looks great in terms of looking at the maternal progenies and, oh, wow, this is going to make a fantastic dairy cow.
Well, I suppose genomics are there as well. I suppose it's another tool, isn't it, to go, it's not there.
And what's being shown is that, colostrum management is having the ability to switch genes on and off. And sadly, we're not ending up with the animals we perhaps should have ended up of because of some simple management.
Well, we're all getting into epigenetics and everything else now when we start talking about that, aren't we? To say that's a whole different ball game.
We've got another hour.
But actually, the effect of colostrum on epigenetics is massive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, exactly. If anyone knows anyone can talk about epigenetics, I'm quite happy for them to come on here and talk about it, because again, it's a new thing that most people don't know a lot about.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing. Rachel, any more thoughts from yourself?
Not really. I think we just did start a whole new topic there, which is about the magical properties of colostrum. It's not actually just about the IgG. We use the IgG as a marker.
Yep.
It's got all sorts of substances that massively impact health of the calf and its potential to fulfill its genetic potential later on. So it's a big area.
Get your colostrum
right,
and then get your colostrum right into your calf, and then take it from there.
Yeah.
Sarah?
The costs of not getting it right. I think that's what we need to remember. The costs of not getting it right far outweigh the cost of immunology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Have I just done an advert for Bimeda? Sorry.
Potentially.
You better clip it.
Can you clip that? I'll take the payment later.
Oh dear, I think that it's probably time to wrap it up, but I should say thank you very much to both of you. It's been absolutely fascinating and interesting, because I caught a bit on the day just to talk about it here in more detail, and hope people listening to this will take more from it. And really, the message isn't any different from whether we spoke when we talked to Laura, or probably you said, Rachel, we've been going on this 10 years. Get your colostrum management right. The point is now, though, we can quantify by not getting it right what that's doing. Whether that's lower daily live weight gain, whether that's the 1,000 litres of milk, or whether that's simply 40% reduction in antibiotics when we do get it right. That's going to stick with me, that one. Definitely. So on that, I guess it's time to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from me.
Thank you very much. Goodbye from me.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast of the UK dairy industry brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. And now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose, and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness, or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during this podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Chewing the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Chewing the Cud Limited, and the views of Sarah Bolt are personal and may not be the views of King Safe Farming and Conservation Limited and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast and details of services offered by Tune the Cud Limited, visit www.tunethecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.